I don't think the Board of Trade Regulations visualized this situation.
RMS Titanic was equipped with 16 wooden lifeboats and 4 collapsible boats. While this provided seats for only around half the people on board, it was actually more lifeboats than the regulations mandated at the time. She featured modern well-end davits that could easily double or even triple her lifeboat capacity. But this didn't seem necessary. The conventional wisdom was that lifeboats were mostly intended to ferry passengers from one ship to another. They were not meant to carry every person on board for a long period of time after a sinking. But what prompted this thinking? The designers and builders of the Titanic were well aware that their ship could sink. But they were confident in their design. She was equipped with watertight compartments that could contain or at least slow the flooding in an emergency. She was designed to operate in the North Atlantic, on the busiest shipping route in the world. It was thought that if something terrible should happen, another ship would almost certainly be nearby to mount a rescue. Their confidence wasn't just built on years of innovation and design. It was bolstered by another White Star liner that sank just as plans for the Titanic and Olympic were coming together. A disaster in which the heroic actions of a wireless operator saved nearly everyone on board and created a false sense of confidence in the safety of shipping at the time. The sinking of the RMS Republic taught shipbuilders all the wrong lessons and helped seal the fate of Titanic's passengers. In the late 1890s, a young Italian inventor, Guglielmo Marconi, was determined to demonstrate the capabilities of his new wireless messaging system. Marconi was far from the first person to discover that signals could be transmitted wirelessly using electromagnetic waves, but he was one of the first to develop a practical system to harness these waves to send wireless messages using Morse code. More an entrepreneur than an inventor, Marconi was eager to promote and commercialize his invention. At just 25 years old, he was invited to demonstrate his work in the United States for the first time at the America's Cup International Yacht Races off Sandy Hook in the autumn of 1899. The Americans were deeply impressed that the results of the races could be transmitted wirelessly to Manhattan in just seconds. The transatlantic shipping companies were eager to install Marconi's devices. The ability to offer wealthy passengers the opportunity to send messages to their friends or family at home from the middle of the North Atlantic, for a modest fee, was a no-brainer. While a Marconi wireless set would offer novelty and convenience for passengers, the equipment played little role in the operation and navigation of the ships they were installed on. Operators weren't considered a part of the ship's crew. They were employees of the Marconi Wireless Company, working on board through contract. In the early days of wireless, a new crop of young enthusiasts quickly formed radio clubs throughout the world as the technology gained a following in popular culture. Typically teenage boys, these were truly the tech nerds of their day. Soon, hundreds of young men were signing up to learn Morse code and become wireless operators. They quickly developed a language all their own. The letters OM, short for old man, was a common term of camaraderie. Another code, CQD, was thought up as a distress signal. While wireless sets were installed on ships for commercial purposes, many of these young radio operators recognized the potential aid wireless communication could provide in an emergency. CQD was short for Seeking You Danger, but by 1909, this distress signal was never actually used. One of these young enthusiasts was Jack Benz. He was born in Brigg, Lincolnshire on September 16, 1884, to an average working-class family. At just age 12, Jack landed his first job as a messenger for the Great Eastern Railway in Peterborough. In 1898, he was struck by a railway car, severely injuring his legs. Ordinarily, his legs would have been amputated, but the doctor decided against the procedure because he was sure that Jack would die. But Jack recovered and eventually returned to work with the aid of crutches and began working as a junior operator. In just 2 years, he fully recovered from his injuries. After a series of jobs where he studied every aspect of wireless radio, Jack enrolled in the Marconi training school at Seaforth and he was certified in just 3 months. His first assignment was on the German liner Kaiser Wilhelm der Grosse in 1905, but 3 years later, the German government banned foreign wireless operators from their ships, so Jack was reassigned to the White Star Line. His first assignment was the liner RMS Republic. Constructed at the Harland and Wolff shipyard in Belfast, Northern Ireland, the RMS Republic started her career as the SS Columbus. She was built for another international mercantile marine subsidiary, the Dominion Line, a sister company to the White Star Line. Launched on February 26, 1903, she sailed her maiden voyage in October of 1903. But after only 2 voyages, the Columbus was sold to the White Star Line and renamed the RMS Republic to hold the name following the sale of the original Republic in 1889. Designated to sail between Liverpool and Boston, the Republic was well appointed for a ship serving this secondary route. She was on the larger side for the time, coming in at 15,400 tons, with a length of 570 feet or 173.7 meters, and a beam of 67.8 feet or 20.7 meters. Her twin propellers achieved a service speed of 16 knots, and she could accommodate up to 2,830 passengers with a crew of 300. While she's since gained a reputation as the millionaire's ship, the luxury of her interior spaces is a little over-exaggerated these days. She certainly boasted spacious and comfortable accommodations that were class-leading for the routes she serviced, but she was only on par, if not slightly below, what was offered on larger liners designed for the premier New York routes operated by White Star, Cunard, and other European lines. Part of what gained the Republic this reputation came when she was assigned a new Mediterranean to New York service in November of 1904. At around this time, there was a growing surge of immigration from Italy to the United States, and also a burgeoning European tourism industry. This meant that the Republic could take wealthy Americans to the Mediterranean on eastbound crossings, a role her fine accommodations were well suited for, and return filled with immigrants on westbound voyages, a role her expansive third class was also well suited for. The Republic might have also carried a considerable shipment of gold coins when she sank, which was actually unrelated to her wealthy passengers. But this potential gold cargo has greatly added to the millionaire ship story over the years, but we'll get to the gold later. The surge of immigration from Italy to the United States was also creating a boom for Italian shipping companies. To accommodate this increased demand, the Lloyd Italiano line commissioned a new 5,000-ton vessel, launched on June 22, 1905. The SS Florida was a modest ship designed to carry just 25 first-class passengers and 1,600 third-class passengers. She could achieve a modest 14-knot service speed and was overall fairly unremarkable. On December 28, 1908, Messina was rocked by a 7.1 magnitude earthquake that killed between 75,000 and 82,000 people. The disaster displaced thousands and prompted a new surge in immigration as refugees fled the devastation. On January 10, 1909, the SS Florida left Naples for New York loaded with 850 refugees on a government-funded relocation voyage. Most of these passengers had little choice but to immigrate to the United States. A little over a week later, at 5 p.m. on the evening of Friday, January 22, 1909, the RMS Republic left New York Harbor with 742 passengers and crew, bound for the Mediterranean. Many of these passengers were wealthy Americans beginning their vacations. She was under the command of Captain Inman Silby. In the first hours of the voyage, the Republic's lone wireless operator Jack Benz spent the evening sending commercial messages and a few location reports. As they neared Sandy Hook, the liner sailed into a dense fog bank. At midnight, Jack finally allowed himself to get some rest, and he turned in for the night as the ship's automatic foghorn rang out into the darkness. The Florida was on the last day of her voyage to New York when she was overtaken by a dense fog bank. Without any visual references, the liner was essentially sailing blind in the early morning hours of January 23, 1909. The 200 miles between Sandy Hook and the Nantucket lightship was known at the time as the Times Square of the Seas. More than 24 vessels passed through the area every night. To organize the congestion, east and westbound lanes were established with 30 miles of separation between them. Commanded by 28-year-old Captain Angelo Respini, the Florida was sailing well outside the proper channel as they searched for the Nantucket lightship. On the Republic, with no other tools available, Captain Sealby left his wheelhouse and stood on his bridge wing listening in the darkness. He soon heard the faint sounds of another ship. Realizing that the sound was fast approaching, he took decisive action and ordered the ship hard at port. He sounded his whistle to signal for the oncoming ship to do the same. But the Florida instead turned in the opposite direction, putting the Republic directly in her path. Why the Florida made this maneuver is unknown, but it's suspected that the quartermaster who was at the wheel at the time might have panicked and mixed up the order, turning the ship in the wrong direction. As the lights of the Republic materialized in the fog, Captain Respini realized that there was nothing they could do. At 5:47 a.m., the Florida's bow smashed into the Republic amidship on her port side, slicing from deep within her engine rooms up through her upper passenger cabins. 2 first-class cabins bore the brunt of the collision. One occupied by a wealthy liquor wholesale manager Eugene Lynch and his wife Mary, and the other occupied by banker William James Mooney and his wife Ocella. Mary Lynch and William Mooney were critically wounded and died not long after the collision. Eugene Lynch was also severely wounded. 3 crewmen housed in the Florida's bow were also killed in the collision, including 14-year-old Salvatore D'Amico. Salvatore lost his entire family in the Messina earthquake. With few other options, he begged Captain Respini to join the Florida's crew, and was led on just before the ship departed Naples. While the collision on the Republic was violent, the aftermath was remarkably calm. The damage was surveyed, and it was found that the ship was sinking at about 1 foot per hour. The ship's watertight compartments were holding, and her pumps were nearly able to keep pace with the flooding. But it was clear to Captain Sealby that his ship would eventually sink, and he began organizing an evacuation. Only moments before the collision, Jack Benz woke after hearing a change in the fog whistles. Wireless operators usually had excellent hearing, and Benz had trained himself to pick up on even the faintest changes in sound. Suddenly, there was a tremendous crash that threw him out of bed. His quarters and the Marconi equipment inside were hit in the collision, damaging the cabin and exposing everything to the elements. Benz was uninjured, and he found that while the wireless equipment was damaged, it was possible to make repairs. But the collision cut the ship's power almost immediately. Benz acted fast. He carefully navigated the damaged ship, going deep into the dark and flooding engine rooms where he retrieved a set of auxiliary batteries. Within about an hour, he was able to get the wireless set working. The lives of everyone on board the 2 ships depended on the new equipment. But without ship's power, the range was limited to only about 60 miles. Benz prayed that someone would be close enough to hear their distress call. The Florida was a small and heavily loaded steerage ship. While it seemed she would survive the damage of the collision, she was only barely able to take on the Republic's passengers. The Florida's passengers were given no information about the accident. Tired and fearing that the ship was about to sink, a panic soon broke out. The ship's officers were forced to use arms to maintain control. The situation on the Republic couldn't be more different. The collision woke most of the passengers, and they quickly navigated the darkened ship and assembled on deck. The ship's crew worked hard to keep everyone calm. Coffee and sandwiches were served, as well as whiskey and other drinks. 40 minutes after the collision, Captain Sealby announced that the ship had been injured in a collision. He said that while they were in no immediate danger, it was prudent that they began evacuating to the ship that struck them, and so they began transferring passengers to the Florida. The slow and orderly evacuation started with women and children, followed by first-class passengers and then the lower classes. This was one of the few rescues with an explicit class distinction. As preparations for the evacuation began, Jack Benz reported to the captain that the wireless was working and ready to send messages. He was so cold from wading through the flooded engine room and working in the damaged wireless cabin that his teeth were chattering. The captain told him that he didn't need to be afraid, but Benz reassured him that he wasn't afraid, he was just really cold. Sealby gave him the message, and Benz raced back to the wireless set and began sending. CQD, CQD, Here is MKC. MKC shipwrecked. Republic rammed by unknown steamship. 26 miles southwest of Nantucket lightship. Badly in need of immediate assistance. This was the first time wireless was used to transmit a distress signal at sea. 47 miles away, Jack Irwin, the operator at the wireless station at Sconset on Nantucket, was just barely in range when he heard the call at 6:40 a.m. Irwin took down the message and began broadcasting it with the station's wider range. Soon, another White Star liner, the 24,000-ton RMS Baltic, answered the call. Not only was she the closest at just 90 miles away, she was also one of the largest ships in the world at the time, with plenty of space to rescue everyone on board both ships. She raced to the scene of the accident. After 2 hours of waiting, Benz was growing more concerned. He sent a message to Irwin saying that the ship was sinking faster. To his great relief, Henry Tattersall, the operator on the Baltic, was now in range and answered his message himself. "Don't worry, old man. We're bursting our boilers to get to you." The evacuation proceeded slowly. Badly injured, Eugene Lynch was lowered in a stretcher into a boat and taken aboard the Florida. When the passengers were off the Republic, the crew followed, leaving only Captain Sealby and a few officers. Jack Benz was meant to leave the ship with the rest of the crew, but he remained at his post. By 11 a.m., the Republic was listing badly. He sent an updated position to Tattersall, but in the dense fog, locating the stricken liner was like finding a needle in a haystack. By 4 p.m., the Baltic's messages were stronger than ever, indicating to Benz that they had to be very close. The two ships began firing rockets, hoping to use the sound of the blasts to locate each other. When the Baltic heard a rocket, they would sail in that direction, but with the Republic drifting in the current, it would be gone by the time they reached any one position. Benz and Tattersall messaged back and forth, relaying new positions and telling each other when a rocket was fired and if they were able to hear it. By the early evening, as darkness fell, the Republic had run through all of their rockets, and the Baltic had just one remaining. Hope was fading. Tattersall, recognizing that Benz was exhausted and growing more anxious, sent reassuring messages, encouraging his fellow operator that they would soon find them. He told Benz that the Baltic was about to fire their last rocket. The men left on board listened for the blast. The Baltic fired the rocket. On the Republic, only Benz, his hearing trained by years of listening for faint radio signals, could hear the distant echo of the blast and identify the direction it came from. He raced back to the wireless cabin and relayed the message to Tattersall. Just moments later, the bright lights of the Baltic emerged from the fog. All through the night and the next morning, all 1,500 passengers and crew from both the Republic and the Florida were transferred in 83 boatloads to the Baltic. It was the largest transfer of passengers to ever occur at sea without any loss of life. With every passenger and most of the crew now safe on the Baltic, attention turned to trying to save the Republic. 2 more ships arrived on the scene to help, and there was even an attempt to establish a tow line, but this quickly failed, and it was clear that the ship would soon go under. Captain Sealby ordered Benz and the remaining officers to abandon the ship. The captain remained on his bridge as the Republic submerged stern first and disappeared into the Atlantic. Only moments after she foundered, Captain Sealby bobbed to the surface, and he was soon picked up from the water. The Florida was able to limp back to New York with a skeleton crew and Eugene Lynch, who was too injured to be transferred to the Baltic. He was near death as he was transported off the ship. In his final moments, he asked for a brandy and that a medal be presented to the ship's wireless operator. He died soon after. The Florida's bow was repaired, and she was soon returned to service. Jack Benz was celebrated as a hero, as news of the rescue made headlines all over the world. New York held a ticker-tape parade to celebrate the young hero, who found himself overwhelmed by all the attention. He was invited to testify before the United States Congress on behalf of a bill that would mandate 24-hour wireless coverage on all ships. He was celebrated, but Congress ignored his warnings. The Republic disaster and subsequent rescue pushed confidence in maritime safety to an all-time high. The collision was severe, and it struck the ship's engine rooms, a particularly vulnerable spot. But her watertight compartments and pumps worked exactly as they were designed to. keeping the ship afloat for hours, giving plenty of time to evacuate everyone. It was now commonly believed that major disasters on the North Atlantic were a thing of the past for modern passenger liners. Jack Benz returned to England and soon returned to work on other ships. In 1912, he received a new assignment, the brand new RMS Titanic. But he was to be married, and he wanted a job that wouldn't take him away from his new wife. So he resigned from the Marconi company shortly before the Titanic sailed her maiden voyage. The story of the Republic is mostly forgotten today, but her fate is inextricably linked to the fate of the Titanic. Her rescue proved a concept that fueled the mounting hubris at the time, a blissful confidence in modern technology that the Titanic disaster would shatter in an instant. Oh yeah, the gold. So the Republic might have been carrying the payroll for the United States Navy's Great White Fleet, totaling around $250,000 in gold coins and another $3 million in US gold double eagles. It's estimated that the gold would be valued at well over $1 billion today. Her wreck was discovered by Captain Martin Barrell in 1981, 50 miles off Nantucket Island, in around 270 feet of water. Her cargo holds remain inaccessible despite several attempts to retrieve the treasure. That's all I've got. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this one, help out the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing for more stories like this one. I'd like to give a special shout out to my supporters on Patreon. They are without a doubt my sunken treasure. Alright crew, until the next one, be nice to people.